The train screeched to a halt at the station, its windows fogged with grime. Citizens shuffled off in a silent, unending stream, their faces pale from hunger and the ever-present fear. The air was a toxic cocktail of rust, smoke, and something metallic. Something cold, and looming above it all, a constant, menacing presence. Was the citadel a black spire piercing the grey sky, humming with a power that promised only subjugation? Erin, a young man nearly swallowed by his worn jacket, kept his head down as he stepped onto the platform. He tried to make himself small, invisible. It was a survival instinct everyone learned. The Combine soldiers stood like statues of polished white armor and black visors, their inhuman forms a stark contrast to the weary populace. Their eyes or whatever sensors lay behind those blue lenses scanned the crowd with a cold, unnerving precision, looking for any sign of dissent, any flicker of defiance, a disembodied voice, smooth and disturbingly calm, echoed from the propaganda screens plastered across the station walls. Welcome, welcome to City 17. You have chosen, or been chosen, to relocate to one of our finest remaining urban centers. Erin clenched his jaw. The words a bitter irony. Chosen? He hadn't chosen anything. He was here because the Combine had demanded it, because his old life had been erased. And because survival in this new world meant absolute, unquestioning obedience. Later that morning, Erin found himself in another line, this one snaking down a bleak concrete block. He joined the queue outside the distribution center, a human chain of desperation. The line stretched for what felt like miles. Citizens clutching their ration cards like they were the most precious things they owned. And maybe they were. A Combine soldier, impatient and bored, barked orders, shoving people forward with the butt of his pulse rifle. The sound was a dull thud against worn fabric, a rhythm of oppression. When Erin finally reached the counter, the clerk, a citizen just as broken as the rest, handed him a small packet without ever looking up. The wrapper was a nondescript grey. The contents would be tasteless, joyless, not food, but fuel. Just enough to keep the body moving, to keep the machine of the city running. He stared at it, the weight of its meaning heavy in his palm. He whispered under his breath, so low no one could hear. Food that keeps you alive but never lets you live. It was a dangerous thought, one he quickly buried. On his way back to the sterile apartment block he now called home, Erin slipped into a narrow, damp alley. A shortcut, yes, but also a way to avoid a passing patrol. The walls were slick with grime, and the air was thick with the smell of decay. Faintly scratched into the brick, almost erased by time and weather, he saw it, a Lowndes symbol. The mark of the resistance, a ghost from a war everyone was supposed to have forgotten. A hooded figure brushed past him, their shoulder bumping his. It was deliberate. The figure pressed something small and stiff into his hand before disappearing back into the stream of pedestrians. Erin froze, his heart hammering against his ribs. He felt the phantom weight of the soldier's gaze on his back, even though no one was there. He waited a moment, then another, before his trembling fingers unfolded the object. It was a flyer. Edges worn, the ink smudged, and in the center, a bold red mark, the symbol of the resistance. A wave of shock, of terrifying hope, washed over him. He whispered to the empty alley. They're real, the rebels. They're not just whispers. He quickly tucked the flyer deep into his pocket. As the heavy, rhythmic stomp of a soldier's boots echoed from the main street, he emerged from the alley just in time to see the patrol. A Combine soldier had a man pressed against a wall, his face a mask of terror. With a violent shove, the soldier sent the man sprawling to the ground. His ration packet burst open, its meager contents scattering across the filthy pavement. No one moved. No one dared to help. Fear was a chain binding them all. Aaron's hands clenched into tight fists inside his pockets, his knuckles white. The anger was a fire in his gut, hot and sickening. The soldier's helmet, its blue visor and emotionless void, swiveled and locked onto him. Time seemed to slow. Aaron held the gaze for a fraction of a second before instinct took over. He lowered his eyes, swallowing the bile of his own fury and shame. He turned and walked away, his own words a silent vow in his mind. One day I won't look away. Night fell over City 17, but darkness brought no comfort. Back in his small, cold apartment, Aaron sat by the cracked window. The city's grim landscape spread before him. He stared at the citadel, its lights pulsed. Rhythmically, a giant, mechanical heartbeat that reminded everyone, constantly, who was in control. He took out the flyer again, his fingers tracing the rough paper, the smudged red lambda. The symbol felt warm, alive. If they can fight, he thought, the idea taking root in the barren soil of his mind, maybe I can too. Not today, but someday. The city outside was silent, wrapped in a blanket of enforced peace. But inside Alan's chest, something new and dangerous stirred. A flicker of defiance, a spark of hope, as he stared out at the oppressive dark, his eyes, for the first time, held a faint glow of rebellion. A change had begun. This was the end of the citizen and the birth of the fighter. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to like and subscribe for the next chapter of the rebellion.